What if the reason you feel lost isn't because you lack guidance, but because you lack something deeper, something older, something unshakable? In a world flooded with life coaches, online gurus, and endless motivational clips, maybe what you really need isn't someone shouting at you through a podcast mic. Maybe what you need is a standard, a fixed point of truth in a world that won't stop spinning. Welcome to the channel. If you're a man who's hungry for meaning, tired of the noise, and ready to face uncomfortable truths, then you've come to the right place. Make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and buckle in. Because today, we're not just breaking myths, we're dissecting the soul of masculinity. Let's begin with a single image. Picture a boy, maybe 12 years old, standing at the edge of a creek. His clothes are muddy, his hands scraped, and his eyes, those eyes, are searching the horizon. Behind him is the echo of his father's voice, barking orders. But there's no guidance, no wisdom, only absence. The boy is growing up in a world that tells him he must figure it out, but gives him no blueprint. So he grows older, turns 18, 25, 30, still looking toward the horizon, hoping someone will finally give him the manual. But the manual never comes. And that boy becomes just another man lost in the modern maze. Does that sound familiar? We're living in the age of content overdose. Thousands of coaches promising transformation. If you'll just buy their 8-week course, sign up for their private community, or memorize their 7 pillars of greatness. There are coaches for how to speak, how to date, how to eat, how to sleep, and yet, more men feel weaker, more confused, more spiritually hollow than ever before. Why? Because coaching without a standard is like sailing without a North Star. Men aren't built to chase advice. We're built to chase excellence. But you can't pursue excellence if you haven't defined what it looks like. The modern man suffers not from a lack of coaches, but from the absence of a code. You see, in ancient Sparta, a boy wasn't told to find his purpose. He was raised in purpose. Every action, eating, sleeping, training, was done with a singular focus, to live and die by a warrior's code. There were no coaches huddling over them with TED Talk buzzwords. There was only expectation, a standard that every man was measured against. A standard that wasn't up for negotiation. And here's the part that should make your blood run cold. When men no longer have a standard, they make one up. And when the standard is chosen by influencers, corporations, and convenience, it doesn't elevate you. It corrupts you. Let that sink in. When you scroll through social media and see six-pack abs, private jets, alpha male podcasts, what are you really seeing? You're seeing manufactured standards. Not based in wisdom, not grounded in history, but optimized for clicks. And so men chase those illusions like moths toward a flame, and they burn for it. Now let me ask you something brutal. When was the last time you set a personal standard that wasn't based on comparison, but on conviction? When was the last time you told yourself, this is who I must become, because anything less is beneath me? Most men never do, because without guidance we drift. But not all guidance is noble. Some of it is poison in a chalice. That's why so many men, even after years of self-help and digital mentoring, still feel empty. It's not because they didn't work hard. It's because they built their lives around mirages. History is full of men who didn't have coaches, but became giants. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for a YouTube mentor to teach him stoicism. He forged his philosophy while governing an empire under threat. Ernest Shackleton didn't need a productivity course. He survived the Antarctic by holding to an inner code, refusing to let a single crew member die under his command. These men weren't perfect, but they were anchored. Now contrast that with today's reality. Men wake up and check their phones before they even brush their teeth. They scroll through 37 pieces of advice before they've even had their first coffee. And then they wonder why their spirit feels diluted. We're drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. This isn't a rant, it's a warning. Because if you don't define your standard, someone else will. And chances are their version of a man has nothing to do with integrity, courage, or discipline. It has everything to do with profit. The algorithm doesn't care about your soul. It only cares about your attention. But let's get more personal. Let's talk about you. Yes, you. You're here because something in the title grabbed you. Maybe it made you pause. Maybe deep down you already know that the problem isn't out there. It's in here. That somewhere along the line you stopped holding yourself to something higher. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, but because the world kept telling you to follow others instead of forging your own path. So let's dig into that. Have you ever noticed how the greatest men in history didn't wait for permission? They built their own standard. They drew a line in the sand and said, "Here is what I will tolerate, and here is what I won't." They weren't obsessed with popularity. They were obsessed with principle. Think of Viktor Frankl, surviving Nazi death camps, not by following a coach, but by clinging to a personal belief that life had meaning, even in the middle of unspeakable suffering. Think of Miyamoto Musashi, undefeated in 61 duels, who meditated on the sword as a path to inner truth. These men didn't ask, "What should I do?" They asked, "What must I become?" But we've replaced becoming with branding, and men are suffering for it. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man I knew, let's call him Caleb. He was obsessed with self-improvement. He had 7 planners, 3 vision boards, and followed every high-performance coach he could find. But every time we talked, he seemed more anxious, more unsure of himself. I finally asked him, "Caleb, what do you actually believe in?" He stared at me, not because the question was hard, but because no one had ever asked him that before. What do you believe in? Not what you want. Not what you wish. What do you stand for? That silence, that pause, is the moment most men never confront. But it's the moment that changes everything. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Without a standard, your life is just noise. You can make money, build muscle, date women, travel the world, but without a core principle guiding you, it's all dust in the wind. A man is not measured by what he achieves. He's measured by what he endures in service of his principles. And here's the twist. Once you raise your standard, the world will test you. Your relationships will shift. Your habits will resist. Your environment might even turn hostile. Because high standards disrupt comfort, and comfort is what modern life worships. But comfort never built a king, or a father worth emulating, or a soldier who stood his ground. Comfort is what you get when you abandon the climb. So here's the challenge I'm giving you right now. Not to find a coach, not to find another course, but to sit alone in silence, no distractions, no devices, and ask yourself one question. What do I stand for, even if it costs me everything? Because the moment you answer that truthfully, you become dangerous. Not violent, not reckless. Dangerous in the way all great men are. Grounded, unshakable, unmoved by trend or trauma. A man with a standard doesn't need motivation. He is the motivation. He's the standard others measure themselves against. And that kind of man is rare. Too rare, but not extinct. You can be him. You just have to choose. But choosing isn't a single moment. It's not a dramatic decision made in the middle of the night with a glass of whiskey and a Spotify playlist. It's not cinematic. It's daily, quiet, brutal, repetitive. It's waking up and choosing the hard thing over the easy thing, not because someone told you to, but because your standard demands it, and most won't understand you. They'll look at your discipline and call it obsession. They'll mock your refusal to compromise. They'll call you rigid, outdated, extreme. Let them. That's the price of clarity. Because when a man starts living by a code, he becomes a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable. You'll expose their excuses just by standing still. Their laziness will scream in your presence. Their lack of purpose will feel like a wound when compared to your resolve. But remember, this isn't about superiority, it's about alignment. You're not living this way to prove you're better. You're doing it because you can't live with yourself any other way. That's what having a standard means. It's the quiet integrity that whispers, even if no one is watching, I still will. Because you know who is watching? You, that boy you used to be. The one who needed someone to show him what a man really looked like. He's still in there, watching every move you make, begging you not to become just another disappointment. And maybe that's the deepest truth of all. Maybe we don't raise our standards to impress the world. but to redeem the child in us who never had one to begin with. You see, men throughout time weren't forged in comfort. They were forged in clarity. Samurai lived by Bushido. Medieval knights upheld chivalry. The Stoics wrote daily meditations to remind themselves of their values, not because they wanted to feel good, but because they refused to drift. They knew the dangers of a man without a compass. They knew what happens when power has no principle, and they feared becoming their own enemy. But today, how many men have even heard the word honor without laughing? How many understand duty not as a burden, but as a privilege? Somewhere along the way, manhood stopped being sacred. It became a brand, a costume, something you perform in Instagram reels instead of something you live. But masculinity isn't about posture or followers. It's about weight, the kind you carry, the kind you refuse to set down even when your legs shake. Let me tell you about a man named Audie Murphy. Most people don't know his name, but they should. He was the most decorated American soldier in World War II. Barely 5'5", barely 110 pounds. He wasn't born with broad shoulders or a booming voice. But in the middle of a battlefield, with his unit pinned down and hundreds of Germans advancing, he climbed onto a burning tank destroyer and held the line alone. With a single machine gun, for over an hour, wounded, outgunned, and outnumbered. He didn't flinch. He didn't retreat. Why? Because his standard was, I don't leave my men. Not I'll fight if it's easy. Not I'll be brave when the odds are fair. No, just one rule. One line in the sand. I don't leave my men. That's a standard. And it outlasted his fear, his pain, even his logic. What's your line? Because the world will test it. Your standard is only real when it costs you, and it will cost you. Maybe relationships, maybe comfort, maybe peace of mind. But what you gain in return is priceless. You gain respect, first from yourself, then from others. You gain clarity, a vision that cuts through the fog of culture. You gain legacy, because a man with a standard leaves a trail others can follow. He becomes a lighthouse, a map, a myth. But make no mistake, this path is lonely. There's no cheering squad for discipline, no trophies for integrity. The work is invisible, the rewards are slow, and the battles are internal. You won't get likes for walking away from temptation. You won't trend for doing the right thing when no one notices. But you will become something rare, something whole, something holy. There's a passage in the Old Testament where it says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way." It doesn't say the steps will be easy or popular. It says they're ordered, aligned, deliberate. That's the life of a man with a standard. Ordered steps, purpose in the pain, meaning in the silence. And you don't need a coach to find it. You need honesty, you need solitude, and you need courage. Because raising your standard means confronting every place you've been lying to yourself, every area where you've settled, every excuse you've labeled as self-care, and then burning it down, not out of self-hatred, but out of self-respect. A man doesn't change because he's told to. He changes because the pain of staying the same finally becomes unbearable. So if you're still watching this, maybe that moment is now. Maybe you're done drifting. Maybe you're done outsourcing your manhood to strangers on the internet. Maybe you're ready to face yourself. Good. Because now the real work begins. Write your standard. Etch it into your daily habits. Memorize it until it becomes your spine. And when the world tries to pull you away, remember, you don't need a coach. You need a standard. And once you have it, once it's alive in your chest, no one can take it from you. Not the critics, not the culture, not even the chaos. Because a man with a standard doesn't just survive the storm. He becomes the storm. So I'll leave you with this final challenge. Tonight, before you sleep, sit in silence for 5 minutes. No phone, no music. Just you and the question, what do I stand for? Write the answer, and then live like your life depends on it, because it does. Thank you for watching. If this video stirred something in you, don't just click away. Leave a comment. Share it with a man who needs to hear this. And most of all, subscribe. Not because we want followers, but because we want brothers, men willing to rise. This isn't a trend. It's a rebellion against mediocrity, a rebellion against drift. and a return to standard.